Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Impact of AI and Big Data. I'm your host, Melissa Drew. Today's episode is sponsored by WILDA, Women Leaders in Data and Artificial Intelligence. Our guest today is Rehka McCarthy. She is Director of Business Development and Services with Azuba. Now, Azuba is focused on all aspects of cloud, cognitive analytics, AI, deep learning, machine learning, and operationalizing your ML ops. But we're going to be talking today with a more narrow focus around the AI and data sciences, services, and solutions. More importantly, what I think is interesting is Azuba was ranked by Deloitte 2020 and 2021 Technology Fast 50 as one of the fastest growing companies in North America. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for having me today on the podcast.
No, this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Before we embark on the details for today, let's talk a little bit about your journey. You are a woman in technology, regardless of what aspects you play or what angles you talk about. You are a woman in technology, and we want to highlight your journey. How did you start out? When did you get involved in the technologies? And then how you evolved into where you are today?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the introduction, Melissa. Funny story. So this goes back to college in 1994.
Mhm.
I was working, I was attending NC State University, and I had gotten an internship with IBM. And, this is before the internet. We were learning a little bit about it in school through Stanford EDU. And after that internship, it really, you know, it perked my interest into getting into technology. And then I was fortunate enough I grew up in North Carolina for, I don't know, 15 years. And to be able to make the move to Silicon Valley, after graduation was a huge move for me. I was very homesick, but, as I went to Silicon Valley, that's when I was able to put my internship into play into my career. And so I worked with a company called IDC, started off in market research. And then from there, working with different big name clients. And at that time, it was during the dot-com in Silicon Valley. So everybody was going IPO. And as you can imagine, it was crazy, during that time. But it gave me good exposure and experience to be able to start working with Fortune 500 companies. And then from there, I got really interested in SAP. And then I started selling SAP licensing and services. And then from there, I had some early wins in my career. So, one of the areas that, I worked in my previous companies that I worked for a global information technology company. And we were working with a global bottling company. And, without saying the name, we rolled out the first freestyle dispenser machines out. And it was a, small market in Atlanta. And, from there, my interest just grew. And, at that time, so most of my experience is legacy systems, ERP. And then in 2018, I was approached by a boutique AI consulting company. And, honestly, I didn't really know what AI was or ML. It was like, okay, I thought it was more robots, right? And but because of my previous experience with some of these logos, they wanted to bring me in and start working with some of the cloud providers, but also putting AI on top of that and seeing, what type of concepts and what kind of, use cases that people were, companies that were struggling with. And so from there, I did that. And now I'm working for an applied AI data science company called Azuba. And my job responsibilities today is to I'm focusing on the insurance vertical. Mm-hmm. And working on the advanced analytic area for underwriting claims, you name it. And then also, I'm also responsible for some other key accounts. And so my job is really to get a feel from the data leaders and see, what it is in their business requirements that the problems they're looking to solve. And, how can we come in as, an AI partner to be able to, help the enterprises achieve that business outcome. So that's a little bit of a nutshell of how where I started and where I got to where I am today.
So it sounds like technology wasn't something that you went after, but once you discovered it, it was something that you continued to pursue and you've always been around and it's been of an interest.
Yeah. And AI and data science is a very passionate area for me. I think it's the one area that um I really like. I don't look at it as a job. When it's like what keeps you up at night and what motivates you in the morning. This field has definitely done that for me. It's different every day, and that's what I love about this field.
So focusing on one of the topics we wanted to talk with you about to set the stage, we often hear a lot on one extreme of this journey, with companies that they've got the product and they can't take it to production. They can't take it production internally with their internal customers, or they're creating a product that they can't bring into production and commercialize it with, the rest of their customer base. But I want to go to the opposite end of that spectrum, because yeah, there's a lot of focus on the tail end of this process, but I think it's just as challenging to get it up and running. You mentioned earlier, a moment ago, that not everybody really knows what AI is still, or the term is so generalized that maybe they're not sure how to think about AI when it comes to the business challenges or the business requirements. So I'd like to talk a little bit more around the business requirements and creating that successful proof of concept.
Yeah. Thank you very much for setting the stage, Melissa. So, I think in the past, the analytics organization, we focus a lot on analytics. So you've got BI, you've got Tableau, all the fancy dashboards, but then they're coming from all these disparate data sources. And then it's like, what do you do with it, right? And so that's where the power of AI and ML come into play. This is where it started to be the forward thinking and where you can put predictive analytics around that. But in order to do that, the hardest part of my job is, when I'm talking to prospects and customers, is that you have to know what is the outcome that you want to achieve. If you don't have the business outcome, present, and it's not clear, you're not AI ready to move on to even a proof of concept. And so with that, you need to have and usually most companies that I approach, they have data scientists that are already, in their organization. So they're doing some, one-off projects, but then how do you bring that to enterprise deployment? You have to have the stakeholders have to be involved. You have to have an executive sponsor, and they have to, the business and the data science teams have to be in alignment, that they're going to be able to work together, because you need the collaboration of both to do that. And we've said this before in the past, and IT and business, they still have problems talking to each other. It's the same thing. Data science and the business have to talk to each other. And so I always encourage, in the beginning stages of talking to customers, is what is the business outcome you're trying to achieve, and then identify one or two areas that you like to improve in your enterprise. So for instance, in insurance, it could be that you want to automate the underwriting process so you can increase the price on your premiums. Claims, there's so much claim data, so you want to reduce cost in claims. It really is essentially wanting to take the manual process and be able to make your product smarter and faster. And that's really what AI is, in what organizations are trying to achieve. It's taking the manual task. It's not really replacing the jobs of humans. It's more, it's augmenting the process so that you don't have to do all those manual tasks on your own. So I think that's important to recognize.
I find what's interesting in your observations is when you were talking about the earlier stages of business requirements, not once did you lead with technology. Not once did you lead with here's how AI is going to improve. You started the conversation with what are you trying, what are some of the internal things that you're trying to solve? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that you'd like to get better at or reduce cost or create more efficiencies? And then once you understand that, then it's okay, now how are we going to solution this? And I think that's really critical because a lot of companies, when they hear AI, it's okay, where can AI help me? Where can I take AI and improve? But it's going back to those foundational elements of step first with process and then think about how technology is the enabler. Even though we're talking about AI technologies, it's still how is AI technologies going to enable what we're trying to achieve. And I think in some cases maybe AI is not the right fit, but I think there's a lot of opportunities as well.
Well, in order to be successful, free there's a few prerequisites that you have to have in order.
Okay.
And the ask has to be from the, the business, so the data scientists can, do their job, right? You need to know what data is needed. You need to know the availability of data because a lot of data can't leave the premises. And there's data privacy issues, there's GDPR, there's regulatory and compliance. And so that's an issue as well. So that's a barrier that you have to overcome. And you have to know how the data is going to be organized. In order for data scientists to be able to do their job, 80% of the work that data scientists do is data wrangling. And it's cleaning, structuring, organizing the data to be able to get it to a point where you can have it in a structured format that is going to be able to be actionable for insights. And the POC is just it's very much an experiment to see if the outcomes can be achieved. Sometimes it can't. But I think that's a good gauge and a small investment to do, before you do a full-blown implementation. And then, with that data, then you can be able to find out, where you can scale that in the enterprise. And there's a lot of other things that have to happen. There has to be data governance around the data. There has to be tools and technologies that the data scientists have to use to be successful. The Python, there's open source libraries. There's also working on the VM. So if you can't work in the client's environment, you might have to work in a sandbox environment. So there's a lot of moving parts to even get started with a POC that have to happen there's a lot of back end plumbing that has to go on before you get to that point.
So say we're further into this conversation, the process. We've decided that, yeah, this is something that we can do. We've got the commitment for an internal, proof of concept, a POC. What are some of the, what are some of the criteria that would help me in the organization define what that proof of concept would look like? Is it a specific business? What are some of the foundational elements that would help me establish what a proof of concept would look like?
So proof of concept really is what it really entails is being able to apply using computer vision and NLP techniques to being able to, it all depends on the use case that you're trying to achieve, right? We're working right now with an insurance company, and and if I could just kind of get into that use case, it really is. We worked with a reinsurance company, and they are a global reinsurance company, and they had 23 lines of business and thousands of carriers. So you can imagine how much data is out there, and they come in different formats and variations. And so with a POC, we had to look at some of the sample data and be able to apply using computer vision and NLP to be able to get that to a structured CSV output, and and then get it to standardize that data. And you have to be able to, look at the probability of the accuracy of that data to make it usable. So there's a lot of different things that you have to do to be able to get it to, so, and then there's a piece of it where it has to go into the architecture of the rest of the enterprise, and you'll be able to deploy it as an API. So there's different things that you have to do to make that POC reusable, within the enterprise.
You mentioned NLP. So NLP is natural language processing.
Correct.
What are some of the NLP use cases then in insurance that you've been working with?
I mean, this was one of the ones that I mentioned. And then we did work with, we also had another use case where another asset management company, so I mentioned the insurance one, where they wanted to, we built a custom information retrieval system. So we were looking at, the asset managed companies have millions of documents that they have to look at internally and externally. So you're looking at blogs, websites, financial news. And, with that, we had to be able to kind of web crawl through that, we had to use computer vision and NLP, because you're having to break down search terms within paragraphs and sentences.
Mhm.
So look at it as the NLP and the computer vision. So we're using Tesseract OCR, we're using Spacey, those types of NLP tools to be able to bring the cognitive summarization down. So instead of taking millions of documents and being able to apply computer vision and NLP, we were able to make the documents, I think our objective and is the business impact that we had is that we were able to take millions of documents and then be able to make 60,000 documents searchable within 3 seconds. And that's where you're taking the manual processing out of all the advisors of these, advisors at an asset management company, and reducing that time, exponentially, and taking it down to 3 seconds. And then they have relevant documents that they want to use for their job, and it helps them sell better. And the documents are readily available for them to be able to sell. So I think that's that. And there was also 85% improvement in the content for the marketing department to be able to, filter through a lot of the noise that was in all the documents. So that was another use case where we applied NLP.
You've mentioned computer vision. I just want to clarify, when you're talking about computer vision in this scenario or these use cases, it's the OCR technology?
Well,
I
it's
just
more
want to make sure I'm
the
clarifying.
Tesseract OCR is one of the open source libraries that you can use.
Mhm.
And so we custom built those. So for the OCR, we built that, and we use it for different use cases for being able to look at the tables and columns, and there's charts and tables that may not be structured properly. So that's where we can pull data from. And then on the Spacey NLP side, that's where we're able to look at some of the documents, and then you can even take it a step further, and then there's vendor representation of being able to look through some of those documents.
Mhm. Any other use cases that come to mind?
Then another use case that, and one thing I'd like to talk about is maybe the Espresso AI platform. That's our MLOps platform, and that's really an AI ML end-to-end model cycle platform for data scientists. So think of it as, so I'm in sales, right? In business development, I have to put my data somewhere. And, my boss is like, hey, you got to put it in CRM. Well, it's the same concept for data scientists. They need a place to be able to live and work. And that our Espresso platform allows you to do that, where data scientists, I think a good sweet spot for our platform is probably if you have about 10 to 15 data scientists, where you can experiment with your models, production, and then you have the data scientists have access to IDEs and notebooks and be able to productionalize the models in there. And one use case that we are have just started in the POC, and it's kind of in early stages, is that we're working with a tech support company, and they wanted to improve customer experience and their agent performance. And so with that, we're able to apply NLP and be able to help them define, what are the right personas that they have to go after in whatever criteria they're using. And so that's an area where we've been able to help also look at sentiment analysis of what type of agencies they should be targeting. With the recession and some of the way the market changes in post-COVID, there's the personas that we went after have changed, and that's where you can change the parameters and be able to accelerate the process using our platform. And I think an important thing to with our platform is that we are now building model libraries in there. So healthcare is a big focus for me. That's not my area, but we're building model libraries in insurance and banking. And so you can look at credit risk modeling. You can look at various things in there. And it's important with them, when you productionalize your models, you also have to be able to monitor that. You don't want your data to drift. And so that's one thing that our tool can do. And and we're very excited about taking that to some of our clients to be able to see, when a team of data scientists, if that's something that they can use on, and it's cloud agnostic, so it's a plug and play, and it's on, we now have it on AWS Marketplace. So it's a really good platform to be able to operationalize and productionalize your models.
And to clarify for the audience, you referenced model drift. This is after your models and everything's been fully tested and baked, and now it's into that production mode. And then at some point within, it could be a short period of time, or it could be, a longer period of time, what you created those models for and how they're being used in the market by the customer base. Over time, that drift that you're talking about is that gap between what you originally built and how it's being used. Correct?
Yeah, it's really the distribution of your data, right? And because you're gonna have new data that comes in, and so it has to be reusable. And I think the value of that is when it's reusable, and it's rinse and repeat. Once you productionalize, you've got to go through the same process. And so if you're monitoring it, then you have less of a risk of data drift, and then you will have more predictive data. And then I think it's a value add sell to C-level executives, because they don't go on that platform and they're not data scientists. They want to see, they want to see, how can you reduce our costs as an enterprise, and how can you improve operational efficiency? And so when you have that platform, you're able to show how the machine learning system and dashboard improves over time with reusability. Then you can start to show the dollars, and you can start showing the KPIs in there. And that's what's going to make C-level executives get a buy into this. So I think, that's where the collaboration and cross-functional teams come into play. We're all working together for a similar goal for the enterprise, but there's just it's like love languages. There's different love languages for C-level executives. They're like, reduce cost, increase your revenues. Data scientists like, we're just trying to get the data cleansed and ready for, the business to, interpret our data. And so it takes a lot of change management. It takes a lot of leadership and to make it work. And it's changing every day. I have to constantly keep up with it. Once I think I've learned something, there's always something else to learn.
As we look to wrap up today, you have a perspective, I believe, where you're in the early stages, you're in that business development where you're coordinating and having conversations with a lot of these, corporate entities, whether they're enterprise or what we call mid-market. Do you have any takeaways or leave behinds around what are some of the criteria that would help take something like what you've developed and really set them up to be successful? What are some of the things that they need to think about at the very early stages that's going to help them be successful throughout this journey?
I think the important elements of being successful is, and I think I mentioned this before, Melissa, it's really understanding what your business what you want to achieve, the business outcome. I mean, I go to a lot of prospects and they're like, well, help me improve my operational efficiency and reduce my costs. And I said, but what data do you have? And what can we, I wish it was that simple. And so I think that, a business use case has to be clearly defined, and you have to be ready to make that leap. And I think that, and I understand there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of risk involved, with jumping into something like this, because you have, it's your job, and if it doesn't work out, and failure is, no one likes failure. So I think POC, and being able to identify the problem and what you want to achieve in the journey is the most important part. And I love seeing customers when they are able to align all the things I mentioned before about getting the executive sponsor, getting the buy-in, getting the teams excited. I mean, we're in a project right now where the data science, we have a cadence call every week. They work really well together, and it's nice to see them mature over time, because then you get more, there's more projects that happen, there's more trust, and trust is really the important thing. And I think that's a big factor too. How can I trust an AI vendor out there? Because at the end of the day, my job is the customer is my champion. If they're not my champion, then I've done my job. So
Right.
I think it's really, from my side, not to jump in, but really to understand what problem they're trying to solve. That's really what a use case comes down to. You can't do anything until you've thought that through, and I think that's important. So I think I end with that as far as what the takeaways are. I think I think it's good to be able to move in baby steps and not go into a full-blown implementation until you're ready.
So some of the things that I wanted to recap that I heard was, yes, it's defining that business challenge, but really understanding, why is it you want to do this? What's the purpose? What do you hope to gain out of it? What is your definition of success, which then may come back and change what it is you're trying to do. But then you also mentioned, once you have that in place, it's also around, do you know where the data is that can support this? Do you know what kinds of data is in the organization, or do you need to pull that externally from third parties? So I think what you've highlighted here for me is, it's not just around the original traditional steps of the business case, but it's taking one step further to maybe understand some of the questions that you would ask as you're communicating to that business. Where's the data at? Do you know how to get to it? Do you have people that can access it? Do you have enough data? It sounds like some of those questions can be initially answered, but it also sounds like it's still more of a conversation between you or someone in your shoes and the business.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the end of the day, where you have to feed the models with clean and good data.
Right.
It's the same cliche, dirty data, dirty output, right? And so the model is only as good as the data that's being fed into it. So I wouldn't want to work with a customer that wasn't, data ready yet to be able to do it. It wouldn't really be, I wouldn't be doing my job if I did that. So
Right.
it's important
Perfect.
to do.
I think that's a really good note to end on. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for having me here this morning.